Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and break down Crimson Grove's really incredible phonics lesson plan for the notoriously tricky U sound. If you've spent literally any time teaching young learners how to read, you know that the English language can just be incredibly frustrating for a beginner, right? Just when a child learns the basic rules of the alphabet, boom, we throw vowel teams at them. Suddenly, two letters are working together to make an entirely different noise. Today, we are looking specifically at Lesson 7 of their elementary education phonics adventure. We're going to unpack exactly how this curriculum carefully structures a complete lesson around a single, nuanced phonetic concept, basically turning what could be a point of deep frustration into a moment of genuine discovery for a young reader. Right off the bat, the lesson introduces this daily affirmation. Every new lesson helps me become a better reader. Now, if you're an educator, you know that setting a positive baseline before tackling complex decoding tasks can completely shift the energy in a classroom. Reading is hard work, and kids can get discouraged so easily. This affirmation perfectly sets a wholesome, growth-oriented mindset for the lesson's target audience of, as they call them, exciting explorers. By tying the actual phonetic concept of the day, the word new, directly into a positive affirmation, the curriculum starts building confidence before the formal instruction even begins. It just reminds the kids exactly why they're putting in the effort to learn these difficult sounds.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll meet the oo sound, then explore the oo and u pronunciations. After that, we'll build words and sentences, dive into some practice and activities, and finally, wrap up with the phonics roadmap.
All right, jumping into Section 1, Meet the U sound. We'll be discovering the core objectives of Lesson 7. What's really brilliant here is how the curriculum immediately anchors the auditory lesson in an engaging, adventurous motif for young learners. Let's be honest, capturing a 6-year-old's attention span requires a bit of imagination. Sometimes they just need to feel like Indiana Jones to sit through a phonics lesson. By framing the students as exciting explorers who discover new words, new ideas, and new adventures, the lesson isn't just about memorizing a sound anymore, it becomes a thematic journey. And that repetition of the target sound within the theme itself, that's a super clever way to prime their ears for what's to come, keeping them totally engaged with the material on a narrative level. To guide that journey, the lesson outlines 5 clear goals. Students need to recognize the vowel team U, pronounce the oo and u sounds correctly, read common ew words, use those words in simple sentences, and finally, spell and write those ew words confidently. Notice the deliberate pedagogy here. A very common pitfall in early education is just skipping straight to spelling before a child has actually mastered verbal recognition. Spelling requires a significantly higher cognitive load. These clearly defined objectives prevent that mistake entirely by taking students on a highly logical progression from basic visual recognition to verbalization, then reading in context, and only then moving to the confident, practical application of writing the sound. Moving right along to Section 2, Exploring oo and u, we're breaking down the dual pronunciation. So this is the crux of it. Students have to learn to listen carefully as they read, because these two letters collaborate to make two very distinct sounds. Think about the massive cognitive leap required for a young child here. First, we teach them that letters have individual sounds. Okay, got it. Then we teach them that letters can act as a team. Sure. But now we are telling them that sometimes that team plays by slightly different rules depending on the word. The E and W work together to make one primary sound, yeah, but it can be a hard oo or a softer u. Navigating this ambiguity requires a lot of empathy from the teacher and very clear, unmistakable examples in the curriculum. And this does exactly that. Visually separating words like stew and chew from new and few helps kids immediately grasp this core lesson mechanic. In fact, if you say stew and then immediately say new out loud right now, you can literally feel the subtle difference in how your jaw and your tongue move. By splitting the words right down the middle, the curriculum allows students to practice the physical mouth movements of the two variations back to back. This physical feedback loop is absolutely crucial for retention. The lesson even encourages a fun group chant, like ew says ooh ooh, and sometimes it says you you, which cements this auditory and physical difference through active classroom repetition. Okay, Section 3, Building Words and Sentences. Let's see how we're expanding vocabulary through the oo sound. The curriculum features 20 specific target words, and organizing them like this shows how the lesson scales up. It goes from basic three-letter words all the way up to complex multi-syllable challenges like newspaper and interview. This is just a fantastic example of built-in classroom differentiation. If you're managing mixed ability reading groups, you know exactly how hard it is to keep high achievers engaged without totally demoralizing the students who are still grasping the basics. By having a foundational word like new on the exact same list as interview, the lesson pushes the boundary just enough. It ensures that both struggling readers and advanced readers in the same room are being appropriately and simultaneously challenged. But of course, words mean absolutely nothing without context. There's a well-known phenomenon in early education called barking at print. It's where a child can technically decode the sounds on a page, but they have absolutely zero idea what the sentence actually means because they're basically reading in a vacuum. By placing these target words into relatable, everyday sentences, the lesson brilliantly bridges the gap between isolated sound mechanics and true reading comprehension. Sentences like, I have a new backpack for school, connect the abstract phonics lesson to a child's tangible reality. It effectively turns the mechanical act of decoding into the much more rewarding act of storytelling. Which brings us to Section 4, Practice and Activities. We're reinforcing the lesson through escalating exercises. Notice how these practice exercises deliberately escalate the cognitive load. They start with simple word recognition and systematically build up to independent, creative sentence writing. This perfectly applies cognitive load theory to a phonics worksheet. It starts by simply reading the words. Then, the student differentiates the U sound from other words starting with the same consonant, like having to choose between new, nest, and nose. From there, they fill in missing letters, match words to pictures, choose the right word for a specific sentence context, and finally, construct a sentence entirely on their own. It is a seamless architectural build that scaffolds the learning so the child's brain never gets overwhelmed. To keep the engagement high, the lesson also leans heavily into gamification. Let's face it, repetitive drills can create a whole lot of friction for young learners. But an activity like a word hunt, that masks the repetition as a fun puzzle-solving challenge. Finding and circling sounds in a block of text forces the child to act like a detective, scanning for that visual pattern of E and W. They are still getting the necessary high-volume exposure to the vowel team, but because it feels like a game rather than a chore, that exposure successfully hardwires the U sound into their visual memory without the usual pushback. Finally, Section 5, the Phonics Roadmap. Let's look at where Lesson 7 fits into the broader curriculum. This macro-level view really proves the immense value of a carefully structured sequence. Children have already mastered straightforward single-sound vowel teams like E and O. Now, in Lesson 7, they're tackling U. Why is it placed here? Well, because the dual nature of U, shifting between oo and U, serves as the absolute perfect transitional stepping stone. It prepares their brains for the upcoming conceptually harder diphthongs like oi and ow in lessons 8 through 11, where the sounds actually glide and shift within a single syllable. Seeing it laid out like this really provides an aha moment about curriculum design, doesn't it? It's an incredibly logical mathematical build toward phonetic mastery. As we wrap up this explainer, let's just look back at the journey we took. We started by establishing a baseline of positivity with a daily affirmation, moved into the physical mechanics of the mouth, explored how to differentiate instruction for mixed ability groups, and finally looked at how the oo sound acts as a crucial bridge to more advanced reading. The oo sound might seem small, but unlocking it opens up a massive new vocabulary and paves the way for complex decoding. So I'll leave you with this. How will your exciting explorers use their new words today? Thanks so much for exploring this lesson with me.